They called it innovation. I called it mine. They stole everything, my idea, my future, my name. But what they never saw coming was me owning all of them in the end. I wasn't born with much, but I always had ideas. The kind that kept me awake at night, sketching on napkins, muttering to myself like a madman. Growing up in a small town, people didn't dream big. They worked, they paid bills, they repeated. But I wanted more. Not for fame or money, but because I believed in building something that mattered. My name is Karen, and I've always been a fixer. When I was 12, I took apart my father's old radio and somehow made it work again. At 18, I built a basic sensor system for my neighbor's farm irrigation, saved him hours each week. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. That feeling of creating something useful, it became my addiction. Years later, after struggling through engineering college and working dead-end tech jobs, I found myself obsessed with one problem: battery life. Every device I owned died too fast. Phones, cameras, even electric bikes. I began tinkering in my rented one-room apartment. Days blurred into nights as I experimented with low-consumption circuit systems. The idea was wild: create a microcontroller that intelligently adjusted energy use based on behavior patterns. I knew I was onto something when one of my test modules ran a fan for 10 hours on what should have lasted 4. I jumped, laughed, cried. I don't even remember sleeping that night. I named it PulseCore. Simple, elegant, and mine. But I was running out of money. I barely had food in the fridge. Rent was overdue, and I owed my friend Raghav more than I could count. He believed in me, though, kept bringing me meals, wiring me tools when mine broke. "You're close," he kept saying. "This is going to change everything." And deep down, I believed it too. I believed PulseCore could be the thing that pulled me out of the shadows. It could save energy, lives, and maybe, just maybe, give me the future I dreamed of. What I didn't know was that the spark I had just lit was going to burn brighter than I ever imagined, and not always in ways I could control. I had no lab, no team, and no money. Just an old desk, a soldering iron with a frayed wire, and enough stubbornness to power a city. Every wire I connected, every line of code I wrote, it all came with a kind of desperation. I wasn't just building PulseCore anymore. I was trying to prove I belonged. Raghav became more than just a friend. He was my anchor. He used to joke, "If you ever make it big, don't forget this face when you're being interviewed on TV." I laughed back, but part of me clung to that vision. I needed to believe that all the struggle, the hunger, the endless nights of fried circuits and failed prototypes were leading somewhere. My fingers were often burned from holding wires too long. My eyes blurred from staring at code for hours, but I started seeing results. PulseCore wasn't just theory anymore. It was working slowly but surely. The module could now adapt its power draw in real time, learning the behavior of a connected device and adjusting accordingly. It was small, light, and incredibly efficient. But I needed validation. I needed someone to see what I saw. So I made a video demo, nothing fancy. Just a cheap camera, a voiceover, and the raw proof. A small fan running double the time with PulseCore connected. I uploaded it to a tech forum under the title Energy Optimization Microunit, Early Results. The response was small at first. A few comments. A handful of curious engineers asking questions. Then someone from a startup incubator messaged me. He said, "This could change the game, wanna talk?" I read that message 10 times before replying. My heart was thudding. This wasn't just about technology anymore. It was about crossing that invisible line from dreamer to doer, from fixer to founder. I called Raghav immediately. He screamed louder than I did. I didn't know if they would fund me or just give advice. I didn't even know if they were real. But I knew one thing. I was going to walk into that meeting and show them what I built, wire by wire, mistake by mistake, from nothing. And I was going to make them believe in it, the way I did. The building was nothing like I expected. Glass walls, security guards with earpieces, and polished floors that reflected my worn-out sneakers like a joke. I clutched my prototype case like it was my heartbeat and tried not to sweat through my only decent shirt. The man I met from the forum, Vikram, greeted me with a wide smile and a firm handshake. "We've seen the video," he said. "Your work is raw but very promising." I tried to hide the tremble in my hands as I set up the demo. My mind screamed 100 doubts. What if it short circuits? What if I forgot something? What if I mess this up and lose everything? But the moment I saw the fan spinning longer than it should have, and their eyes widening just enough, something in me calmed. I spoke like my life depended on it, because it did. I told them about PulseCore's dynamic learning loop, how it reduced energy consumption by up to 40% without compromising performance. I explained how it could integrate into phones, appliances, even EVs. I didn't have charts or patents. I had passion and proof. When I finished, there was a pause. Then Vikram said, "Let's take this to the board." 2 weeks later, I was in front of 10 people in suits. They nodded politely, asked sharp questions, and exchanged glances I couldn't read. But I held my ground. I wasn't the smartest guy in the room, but I was the one who had built PulseCore with bare hands and burnt nights. A few days after that, they made the offer. They wanted to partner. A joint development agreement, they called it. They'd provide lab access, a stipend, and mentorship. I'd bring in the technology. The contract was thick, and the legal terms made my head spin. But Vikram smiled again and said, "This is the beginning, Karen, trust me." And I did. I signed the papers, shook hands, and walked out of that building with tears in my eyes. For the first time, it felt like the world was finally opening up to me. I didn't know I had just signed away more than a contract. I had signed away my name. The first few weeks were like living in a dream. I had a real lab to work in, equipment I could never afford, and a small but steady stipend in my account. I even had a badge with my name on it, Karen Mehta, R&D Associate. It wasn't flashy, but it felt like I finally mattered. Vikram would check in often, sometimes bringing coffee, always smiling. "Keep going," he'd say. "You're building something huge." And I was. With their help, PulseCore went from a fragile prototype to a compact, durable unit. We began testing it on different devices, phones, routers, even a small electric bike. The results blew past my expectations. The efficiency gains were real, measurable, undeniable. But then, things started changing. One day, I walked into the lab and noticed someone else working on my setup. He wore a different badge, a higher-level title. "Companies integrating your model into their platform," he said casually. "Just following specs." "My specs, my system." I asked Vikram later. He smiled, too quickly this time. "It's all part of scaling up," he said. "You'll still be involved, don't worry." Then came the company newsletter. On page 3, under Innovations Ahead, was an article about Project Core, a revolutionary energy optimization system. My heart froze as I read the description. It was PulseCore, my PulseCore, but not once did it mention me. I rushed to Vikram. "There must be some mistake. This is PulseCore. I made this. Why's my name not there?" He looked me in the eye, his voice calm. "Karen, you signed over IP rights when you joined the development program. It's company property now." The words hit me like a fist. My knees buckled. "But you said it was a partnership, you said." "I said you'd be part of something big. And you are, but we own the invention now. That's how this works." I stood there, heart pounding, mouth dry. I'd trusted them, believed them, and they'd gutted me with a smile. That night, I sat alone on my apartment floor, the lights off, contract pages scattered around me. I had built something beautiful, and they had taken it with a pen. Days turned into weeks, but the shock never left me. I still showed up at the office, walked the same halls, but something inside me had gone silent. PulseCore was everywhere now, on whiteboards, in meetings, on presentations I wasn't invited to, and I was a ghost in my own story. They started giving me smaller tasks, data logging, analysis work, even running coffee sometimes. It was subtle at first, but it was clear. I had been pushed aside. The invention was theirs now, and I was just another employee, barely that. One morning, I showed up and my access badge didn't work. I scanned it twice, then again. The guard avoided my eyes as he said, "You've been removed from the system, sir." I stood there in the lobby, people walking past me like I was invisible. I called Vikram, but he didn't pick up. I emailed HR. No reply. 2 hours later, I got an auto-generated message. "Thank you for your contributions to the PulseCore initiative. We wish you the best in your future endeavors." I didn't even get to pack my things. Raghav was furious. "They kicked you out of your own invention. How is that even legal?" I didn't have an answer. All I had was a thick stack of paper, the contract I'd signed, thinking it was my golden ticket. Every word, every clause was a trap I hadn't seen coming. I had handed them everything I created, and now it belonged to them, legally, fully. I sank into depression. I stopped eating regularly. I avoided calls, even from Raghav. My savings ran dry. The prototype pieces I once treated like treasure gathered dust in a box under my bed. Everywhere I looked, PulseCore was making headlines. Revolutionary energy saver changing the game, they called it. Engineers praised its design, investors poured in, and not a single one of them knew my name. I used to dream of interviews, of telling my story, of inspiring others. Now I just wanted to disappear. But one night, as I stared blankly at the ceiling, a voice whispered from somewhere deep inside me. They took it from you, but they haven't taken you. And for the first time in weeks, I sat up. I didn't rise like a hero. I crawled, slowly, painfully, with every ounce of strength I had left. At first, it was just to survive. I took whatever jobs I could find, freelancing, fixing broken devices, even tutoring kids in basic electronics. The pay was terrible, but it helped me afford food again. It reminded me I still had something to offer, even if no one knew my name. Raghav never gave up on me. He called almost every day. Sometimes I picked up, sometimes I didn't. But one night I finally broke down and told him everything, how stupid I felt, how humiliated, how hollow. He didn't judge me, he just listened. Then he said something that stuck with me. They stole your invention, Karen, not your mind, not your heart. Those words sat with me like a seed. At first they meant nothing, but slowly, day by day, they began to grow. I pulled out my old notebooks. I read the original notes, the scribbles, the diagrams from before I'd ever met Vikram. And I realized something. They had taken PulseCore. But I had already been thinking 10 steps ahead, ideas for improvements, versions I never showed anyone, smarter algorithms, smaller modules, better potential. I hadn't lost everything. So I began again, not out of revenge, not yet, but out of need. A need to prove to myself that I was more than just one stolen invention. I worked late into the night, sometimes until the birds sang. My fingers remembered the dance of wires and code. My thoughts became sharper, clearer, and one evening something clicked, literally. A new prototype powered on, cleaner and smarter than anything I'd built before. I called it CoreNext. It wasn't just a copy, it was a reinvention, a version they could never have imagined, because it was born from pain, not privilege, from betrayal, not backing. And this time I wouldn't pitch it. I would build it on my own terms. Because now the fire wasn't just in the invention, it was in me. Building CoreNext wasn't just about the tech, it was about reclaiming myself. I wasn't chasing investors or interviews this time. I was building because it was the only thing that made sense in a world that had stopped making any. Raghav offered me his garage. It was dusty, cluttered, and smelled like paint thinner, but it was mine. We cleared out old furniture, rigged up a fan, and turned it into a makeshift lab. No glass walls or fancy equipment. Just a table, a laptop, and me, breathing life back into my future. What I had learned from the PulseCore disaster gave me fuel. I knew now how companies operated, how they smiled while they planned your exit, so I documented everything. I backed up my work in 3 places. I even met with a pro bono IP lawyer who helped me file a provisional patent for CoreNext. It wasn't ironclad, but it was protection, something I never had before. I also began reaching out to small local manufacturers and tech enthusiasts. Not big companies, not incubators, just people who had been burned like me, people who believed in creating, not just profiting. To my surprise, they listened. They offered advice, connections, even cheap components. Some had followed the PulseCore story and saw through the corporate spin. Word spread quietly, but it spread. Raghav became my unofficial co-founder. He took care of logistics, helped with testing, even recorded demo videos. He never once asked for anything in return. "I just want to see you win," he said one night, sipping chai beside me, his eyes tired but proud. And for the first time in a long while, I believed I could. CoreNext wasn't just more efficient, it was adaptable, modular, affordable. It could power small villages, charge remote sensors, reduce grid load in cities. It was tech for the people, not just the market. One night, we uploaded a demo video under a new brand. No ties to PulseCore, no mention of the past. It went viral. People were curious, then amazed, then inspired. And just like that, I was back. Not as a victim, but as the creator I was always meant to be. The online buzz around CoreNext grew faster than I expected. Comments flooded in, from hobbyists, engineers, even environmentalists praising its simplicity and impact. For the first time in years, I felt seen for what I truly was, a creator. But the spotlight wasn't always kind. One morning, I woke up to an email from a lawyer representing the very company that had stolen PulseCore. They claimed I was infringing on their patents and demanded I cease all development immediately. I sat frozen, the words blurring together. It felt like history repeating itself, a giant trying to crush a small flame before it could grow. But this time, I wasn't helpless. I contacted the IP lawyer who had helped me with CoreNext's provisional patent. Together, we analyzed the claims. CoreNext was different. It was PulseCore. It was a new invention built from scratch with original code and design. I had documented every step meticulously. We fought back. The legal process was draining. Calls, emails, hearings. My savings dwindled. I doubted myself many times, but with Raghav's encouragement, I held firm. I wasn't just defending a device, I was defending my identity. Meanwhile, the community around CoreNext grew stronger. Crowdfunding campaigns started. Volunteers offered to help with production, and local media picked up the story of the underdog battling a corporate behemoth. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for, a public hearing to decide whether I could continue my work. Standing in that room facing stern executives and expensive lawyers, I felt the weight of everything, the stolen invention, the betrayals, the nights of hunger and despair. But I also felt something new, strength. I told my story not with anger or bitterness, but with honesty and hope. I spoke of dreams crushed and dreams rebuilt, of pain turned into progress. And when the verdict came down, I won. The court ruled in my favor, recognizing CoreNext as a unique invention protected by my patent. The giant had to step back, and for the first time I was free. Winning the court case was a relief, but it was just the beginning. The real challenge was turning CoreNext from a rebellious idea into a company that could stand on its own, without anyone stealing my dreams again. With Raghav by my side, we registered the company under my name, CoreNext Innovations. I wanted everything transparent, protected, and fair. We started small, manufacturing batches in local workshops, partnering with community groups, and selling directly to customers online. The orders began to roll in. People from villages, tech hobbyists, and small businesses all saw value in what we were creating. Each shipment felt like a victory, a reminder that this time I was building something that was truly mine. But I was also learning to lead. Running a company was different from building a prototype in a garage. There were contracts, negotiations, marketing, customer service. Sometimes it was overwhelming. I made mistakes, lost clients, and had to learn how to say no. Yet every challenge strengthened me. I was no longer the kid who just dreamed. I was the man who could make those dreams real. News outlets caught wind of the story, the inventor who fought back, from stolen invention to startup success. Interviews came, but I was cautious. I wanted the focus to be on the invention and its impact, not just my past. One day, a young engineer approached me after a talk I gave. He said, "Your story gave me hope. I was ready to give up on my ideas." That moment made it all worth it. Looking back, the company that stole from me thought they could break me. Instead, they taught me how to fight, how to protect what matters, how to own my future. CoreNext Innovations isn't just a business. It's a symbol of resilience, a testament that even when they cheat, even when they betray, you can rise, you can rebuild, you can win. And this is only the beginning. Years later, I stood in the lobby of the very building where it all began, the one where they had signed away my invention and nearly my future. Only this time, the receptionist greeted me by name, not as a visitor, but as the CEO. CoreNext Innovations had grown beyond my wildest dreams. We had offices, labs, employees who believed in the mission, not just the money. Our technology was powering homes, schools, and businesses around the world, improving lives and saving energy. But the best part wasn't the success, it was the journey. Every failure, every betrayal had shaped me, made me sharper, wiser, stronger. One afternoon, I received an unexpected call. It was from Vikram, the man who had first helped me years ago. He sounded different, softer. "Karen, I've been following what you've built. I want to talk." I didn't know what to say at first, but then I realized I didn't need anything from him anymore. I had already won, in every sense. I invited him to visit our headquarters. When he arrived, I showed him around, introduced him to the team, and shared the story, not the polished version, but the truth. He looked at me humbled. "You've done what I never could." I smiled. Maybe this time I owned the story. That night, as I looked out over the city skyline from my office window, I felt a peace I hadn't known before. The boy who had been cheated, erased, and forgotten was gone. In his place stood a man who had reclaimed his invention, his dignity, and his life. And the future, it was ours to build.